So this series of videos is looking at designing and building a solo winter camping tent. And in this episode, I begin the sewing and assembly of the tent.
So I've got a large piece of fabric sort of sewn together into a different area shape than it was in the raw bolt. And I'm going to start laying out the panels with a straight edge, tape measure, and markers, and then try to cut those shapes. So it's sort of a quadrilateral piece, and I had two different lengths on both sides, so I kind of had to map out two arcs and find the intersection with the tape measure, without wrinkling this piece of fabric. So yeah, that was pretty klutzy, but I think that's it right there. That's the piece to cut after I check on the computer and make sure I haven't got it flipped, because once I cut it, I'm committed. Okay, so that's one roof panel. There we've got the two pieces for the small end of the tent. I'm gonna try to sew them together as the first step in the assembly. And for this seam, it'll probably be a flat felt seam.
So you wanna sew? Let's go.
Okay. And we'll have a go at that. Okay, that's the first pass. Now we'll go back with the second pass.
Okay, so there's the finished piece. And the next thing to do with this piece is to sew some reinforcing patches on the corners where there's going to be a certain load from the pole set and the weight of the tent. And that's going to be easier to do, obviously, before I assemble the separate pieces into the three-dimensional volume. So what I've got for reinforcing material is this untreated lightweight canvas. It's probably a 7-ounce canvas. So, you know, it should provide I mean, I could do it just with a scrap nylon, but this might be slightly stronger. So that's pretty good there. And do a couple more. All right, so there's the 3 corner patches, plus I put on a 4th patch in the middle so I can sew a loop on the outside for a guy line attachment point. Here's the 2 roof panels, the main side panels, which I've laid out for pinning for the roof seam. I'm going to start with that and then put some reinforcing patches on it. And this is the big part of the tent now, so it's going to get a little congested on the sewing machine. But we'll see how it goes. I've also got this little iron here. In some cases, it may help to put a bit of a crease into the fabric. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to just see if I can, how well that works. If it works at all. The iron is on minimum heat setting. Don't want to melt the fabric. Okay, starting the second pass. completes the second pass. That didn't turn out too bad. Tolerances and straight lines and all the good stuff are slowly leaching away the farther I go here. It's impossible to keep everything straight and exact. So they're starting to get little folds and wrinkles in the fabric, and dimensions are going off, and I'm having to trim stuff I shouldn't need to trim. But with any luck, I allowed enough extra on the seams that I can tolerate some of that stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start a bunch of reinforcement patches for the large roof piece. There's the layout of the full panel with the reinforcement patches. Starting the door, I've got the zipper kind of pinned up here on the edge of one of the door pieces. So I can't find the zipper foot for this old machine. I guess it's been lost. So I have the regular foot right up against the zipper, and then the needle position is as far right as it will go. And that'll be for one pass of the thread. And then I can do a second pass in the regular sewing position. So I had started pinning this zipper from the other side. And that's how I got into a bit of trouble here. I actually pinned it too close to the zipper. And now, there's a slight chance the zipper is going to snag on that overlap. I'm not going to rip it out though. I think it'll do. Okay, maybe this was the answer. I'm going to try sewing from this side. It looks like it's going to be easier. Because that way I can see where this edge is. This foot is not the zipper foot. So it's not ideal if the fabric does not underlay both sides of this foot equally, as it's probably not doing in this scenario. Then that's going to create an angle which would tend to push things apart. Yeah, okay. If I had the zipper foot, it would probably work better. But I'm going to try sewing from this side. So we're going to move the needle over there. And see if I can get it to follow that seam a little better. Oh yeah, this is definitely working better. To sew from this side. So this is where I switch sides, and that looks great. And then down here was where I was doing it the wrong way. And you can see I went right off the edge of it right there. There's some overlap here, potential overlap.
and more overlap right here.
So I have the other side of the zipper pinned from the more practical side and creased with the iron a little bit. And we'll see if this one doesn't go a little bit better. So we're going to move the needle over to the left here, like that. Yeah, it's being able to feed it at just the right angle without pulling it apart as you're feeding it. I still haven't quite gotten the hang of that. Oops. I might have sewed the back together. Sewed it together. Oh, darn. Yeah. I sewed about 6 inches of it together there. Oh man. Just as I was getting going with the zipper, I pull a stunt like this. Okay.
It's probably good enough. So the top one there, that was the first one I did, and this is the bottom one is the second one I did. With it pinned and sewing pinned better and sewing from the better side. So you can see right there, big improvement. So there's the piece finished now with 2 passes on the edges of the zipper. And let's just do a few zips and see if it's kind of working. Just added a few more little patches, like a reinforcement patch at the top, point for a guy line, corner patch. So I'm going to sew a couple loops on the outside for attaching guy points. Okay, so that didn't turn out too badly. All right, so I just cut a little hole here for the vent, and it's just going to be kind of a Velcro arrangement, closed and open. So there's the door kind of spread out from the front. The 2 guy points and the vent at the top. So I think I'll take a break at this point and try to think about how to start the actual 3-dimensional assembly of this thing.
I've got the roof panel there kind of laid out on the left and the door panel laid out on the right. And the first seam I'm going to try to join will be the upper seam of the angle from the top down. I'm working from the top down because I don't totally know the length of these panels that I've made versus the lengths I'm going to cut for the legs. I'm going to try to match them, but generally speaking, I want to work from the top down. In case I need to trim any of the panels, I trim the bottom. And by the same token, I will start with the door panel and sew that on first, and then the much smaller stove panel can be added second if the length of the ridge line needs trimming. It's easier to trim the small end of the tent. So that's why I'm starting with this seam right here. So I'm going to try to pin that up. I've got it pinned up there. And then in between the pins, I just give a little touch of the iron to help establish the crease and make it easier to sew. Okay, so ready to start the first pass here. A little awkward there, transitioning from the thicker to the thinner overlay. A little bit straighter. Okay, so now it's onto just the nylon. So the overlap is kind of a little bit lost in there. Hopefully that's got it. Yeah, I think I got it. Okay. Oh, I lost the overlap. It's always been a problem doing this seam. Okay, I had to pull a lot of those stitches because the two pieces had come apart. I repinned it. What I've tried to do this time is put the pins really close to the edge so I can sew past the pin without removing the pin on the first pass. And that means the seam's going to be a bit wider than it otherwise would be, but I have plenty of extra seam allowance for that. So let's try that and see if it works a little better. Okay, so I've got the needle moved over to the right hand position. So the foot can be a little bit to the left, and there's room for the foot to get past the pin. That's the strategy for this pass, plan B. Let's see if it's going to work. So yeah, I can go right past the pin there, and the pin stays in, and I don't lose the overlap. Okay, let's have a look at that. I think it's cut the edge. Of the whole thing. Okay, so that's good. So I make the second pass. Whoops, still in reverse. Okay, let's try that. See what that looks like. So let's have a look at that seam. Actually, that was right at the edge where I sort of pulled the threads and started again. I guess I just missed that. But the rest of it here looks pretty good. So I think that seam is going to work. I can do the second pass. Okay, I missed a little bit right there. I might tack that down a bit as well. And the rest of the seam, the alignment just wanders all over the place. So definitely not pretty. But it looks like I've got a good seam all the way down there. Okay. So I've got the other side of the door, the other seam pinned up here, and sewing it in reverse to keep the bulk of the fabric on outside the machine. And yeah, I've made a little bit more overlap to just make it easier. The first seam ended up being 1/4 of an inch wide, which is what you see on a real tent. I don't need to do that well. This is going to be more like 1/2 an inch. Pin over a bit, closer to the edge. that's the first pass. That went a lot smoother. You know, with the 1/2 inch seam, it's just way simpler. The 1/4 inch seam was just cutting it too close. But yeah, I think I can just go ahead with second pass directly. So again, the stitch is wandering all over the place. There's a bit of bunching in the fabric, but that one went off without a hitch. So I think I've got the technique kind of figured out for this joining 2 panels seam, which is now creating the 3D volume. Okay, so now I just do the lower half of the angle. Starting the first pass stitch for the lower leg of the main seam between the door and the roof side panel. The folding is starting to get a bit complicated. I don't actually know if the shapes are totally correct or not. I didn't do enough 3D planning on this, as it turns out. But I'm going to try running this pass and see what happens. So here goes the second pass. So this was the upper half of the seam, which I did first. And this is the corner angle where the bend in the leg will be. And then the lower part of the seam runs down here. So you can see the bend that's achieved there. Oh yeah, so the bungled seam. For the top part of this leg, I ran the second pass pinning it down the wrong side, so it left this thing open. And it's like almost 4 feet of otherwise good stitching, so I think I'm just going to leave it. But for the bottom half, I can correct that and pin it down the right way. So I think I'm going to try that and call that Do-It-Yourself Special. So I've got the underlay folded the correct way this time. And I'll just run down the second pass. That completes the second pass. There you can see the angle as laid out. The corner angle, the shoulder that is formed. The upper seam was the bungled one, where you can see I tacked down this side and the unfinished side is sticking out over here. Oh, it may not show up on the camera. Anyway, the tacked down side is here, and then here's the corner, and then I reversed it here. So now the tacked down side is on this side. So I switched it, and only an expert would ever notice that. Oh my God. Okay, so yeah, that completes one end of the tent. It is now a 3D structure. So I'm going to see if I can set it up, the door end of this tent with the poles that I have, and just see what it looks like. So there's the preliminary hang on the front. And this upper pole was going to have to be trimmed a little because there's the corner right there. And over here, the corner, yeah, it's like 4 inches. There's the corner right there. So I trimmed the upper legs by about 4 inches. And then the ridge pole is pretty good. A little short maybe. But if I extend this out, I think I can just squeeze that over that end, and that's still okay up there. Stretching it a bit. So I'd say that's a pretty good outcome. We're just bashing it all together, insufficiently planned out, and a few seat of the pants kind of changes. That's a good start. So that completes the majority of the sewing and assembly for this tent. I still have to attach the stove end panel, but since I've kind of figured out all the difficulties associated with doing that, and it's a smaller panel, that's going to go quickly. The other main thing I have to do is cut the legs, trim the legs to length, and that's going to take a bit of careful measurement. It's hard to tell exactly how the tent will hang until the legs are cut to length, and then if I cut the legs incorrectly, the tent will not hang properly. In any event, that will be the subject of episode 3.